Okay, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. I'm really excited to talk to you. I've been excited all week.
Me too. Me too. So thank you.
Well, no, just a little bit
Where
of,
are you zooming me from?
I'm from Mexico City.
Oh, great.
I'm a high school senior here and I moved here around 3 years ago. So that's where I've been going to school. But I'm looking to study political science or something along those lines in the US next year.
Great. Exciting. Where are you looking?
Um, Mainly on the East Coast. So a couple schools in New
Mhm.
York and perhaps Boston. And then one in the Midwest, which is Notre Dame. But I'm still kind
Mhm.
of looking at what schools to apply to. I've applied to a few, but I'm looking at what other ones to do as well.
Mhm.
Well, no, just a little bit
Excellent.
about myself. I've been writing for Girls for Politics since the summer, so a couple of months now. And I started writing for them because, like I said, I kind of want to go into something that's related to international relations or law or politics. And those are topics that have always really fascinated me, and I wanted to kind of expand my knowledge and really put the knowledge I already have to use and collaborate with other people to see how I can spread the things I know. And should we get started with the questions?
Sure. Sure.
Okay. The first thing I wanted to ask you is, why were you interested in political science and why did you choose to study it?
Okay. So let me make sure I heard why. What made me choose to study political science?
Yes, and why were you interested in
Okay.
it?
Okay. So I was always interested in politics. I grew up in a family where politics was just at the dining room table, and my dad was actually a local politician, so I grew up working on campaigns. And I grew up outside of Washington, D.C., so paying a lot of attention to national news. So politics was always a part of my life. But I was actually really interested in the sciences and loaded up on the sciences in high school. And when I went to college, I went as a bio major. And I was really interested. I thought maybe that I'd go into thinking about solving problems of agricultural reform. Sort of, I was more internationally focused than I am right now. But I found in college that I was much more interested in my history courses than my biology courses.
Yeah.
And so I became a history major, and I loved it. And then after I graduated from college, I um, wasn't quite sure what I wanted to do. I applied. I went home and I worked for a member of Congress for a year. And that's all it took for me to realize that I did not want to work in Capitol Hill or for Congress. And so I applied to school again, and I ended up getting into a program at Georgetown in public policy. And it was actually my mother suggested it to me because it was very applied politics. It was sort of problem solving, and I think I liked that aspect of it. So and once I got into graduate school, I just loved it. I loved it so much. And I thought I want to stay. And I went to my public policy is kind of a combination of economics and political science. And so I went to my political science professor and I said, I want to go further. What do you suggest? And he said, get a PhD in political science. And I went to my economics professor and I asked her what I should do. And she said, get a PhD in political science. So, and it was probably the one that interested me more. And so I did. I got the PhD in political science, and I loved it. And I'm really interested. Um, that I've always sort of focused on public opinion and political socialization. Sort of that? How does it affect how we solve problems with each other? And so that's been a lot of the focus of my work. And I worked for a while for the Pew Research Center for the People and the Press before moving into academia. And so I teach public opinion, I teach political socialization, I teach about the American political system, but my focus is about young people in politics. And more recently, I've been looking at civic education, how we teach people political.
Yeah, I actually searched up your name on Google before the interview, and I saw that a lot of your work was around youth and youth in politics. And one thing I wanted to ask you was, in your time, teaching and just in your career, do you feel like young people are kind of developing like more and more an interest in politics than before?
I do. I've seen it with my students, but also I see it in the data. So their increasing engagement really kind of happened when millennials came on the scene, and now this next generation, Gen Z, even more so. They are more interested, more active, more involved in politics than earlier generations. I think they're engaged too by the big issues that are consuming us of how to live together. How are we taking care of the environment? How are we leaving it for future generations? How safe is it in this country? Thinking a lot about gun control and racial equity. So they really are on the forefront of some of the major issues that are facing us as a nation.
And that makes me really happy, like, to hear you say that, because I totally agree. I'm really like inspired, obviously by people older than me, but also by my own generation, and seeing all the like projects that my schoolmates have going on outside of school related to like environmental justice and social justice. And it's definitely a source of inspiration for me. So another thing I wanted
Oh, my students are a huge source of inspiration for me. They really are amazing.
That's great. In your experience, how has teaching people, both like at university and teaching young people in general, how is it different from learning politics? Like the teaching, learning.
Right, that's a great question. So a lot of political science professors have only studied politics and have never spent any time in a campaign on Capitol Hill, worked in politics, and we study it. And I think we bring to it, because of that, an ability to see the big picture, but also sometimes a lack of reality, right? So there's sort of benefits and trade-offs. So a lot of times you can teach students sort of the theoretical way something works, but having experience on the ground can add a lot, and actually in many ways can help students learn, because you can say in theory this is what a democracy is, but if you went out there and practiced it, this is what's happening. And it's really fun when my students have had actual experience in political campaigns or in activism. I'm teaching a class now, actually, though, that requires, it's called youth political engagement, and they have to do political work, political action work as part of the class. So it's a experiential class. And some of the students come in with a lot of experience. They've worked for Chicago campaigns or national campaigns, or they work on for different organizations. And some of them, it's the first time. And it's so really, I think the best learning is a combination of learning kind of on the job or in real life or in practice, and also kind of understanding what's the purpose. I mean, academia and can give us what systematic studies are saying about an issue. You can get a framework for thinking about an issue, for asking important questions, for stepping back and being able to be thoughtful and reflective and analytic. But there's also a great deal that's beneficial beneficial to being on the ground and experiencing politics for.
Yeah. Kind of related to that, so related to like teaching, what has been your favorite part of teaching at DePaul?
My students, hands down, my students. Amazing. And DePaul students, 40% of our students are the first person in their family to go to college. So we call them first generation college students. They come from all over the country and all over the city. I learn so much from them and their experiences. And it's really gratifying to put them hard and see them produce good to rise to the occasion, and to engage with each other. So in one of my classes, I have them write the story of their own political socialization. You have to place it within the literature, so there's an academic component to it, but also they tell their story. And wow, it's like, I feel so honored to get to read these stories. They're pretty amazing. So yeah, hands down, my students. There are a lot of things I really like about my job, and many, many things, but that's the number one.
That's great. I'm really happy to hear you say that and see how like engaged you are with them and how much your students inspire you, because it makes me really excited for my own college experience.
Yeah.
And another question I had was, I think like when people think of studying political science, they often think of going like they think it implies going into government or kind of becoming this like, I don't know how to describe it, like the stereotypical politician, like you're on the front line all the time, debating. But what are some of the career paths that maybe people don't really consider when studying politics?
I think if you study politics, you can do anything. For one, really, this applies to any liberal arts degree, because what we're teaching in the liberal arts is to read critically, to think analytically, to write effectively, to speak effectively. And so and politics is just what we use as a way of teaching these skills, right? But political science in particular focuses on power and power relationships. So it has a frame, I think a particular frame, whether or not that's the power relationship between nations, the power relationship between people in a country, between leaders and the citizens, or among citizens, right? So there's so many ways in which we think about power relationships. And it's a means of, in its best sense, peacefully resolving conflict. And so we can learn a lot of important skills in thinking about the skills of democracy, right? And the values of democracy should be values that we're teaching people to learn to live. So sort of on more for government, right? So if you're in business and you have it, most businesses are regulated, some are highly regulated, some are less regulated. But if you have that understanding of the way government functions, then you're bringing a particular insight into the business realm, right? There's the nonprofit realm. You can work, there's so many jobs in government that are not necessarily your day-to-day out in the front politics person, but somebody who works, for example, in the department of education, or the department of the interior does understand, because members of Congress, they're not the ones doing all this research, it's being provided to them. So you can also work for a research institute, you can work for a nonprofit who's advocating for something, you can work in private industry, you can work for federal, state, and local government, or you can, you can become a contractor right? And do rehab, or a baker. You can do anything really with this degree, because I think it teaches you skills that are broadly applicable and helps you as a basis just become an informed, educated citizen, which all of us should be.
I agree, yeah. And I mean, I think what you said is really interesting because as we talked before, like a lot of young people kind of have this like social justice driven mentality and they're really passionate about a lot of issues. But I feel like a lot of kids my age kind of feel like they're not that extroverted, they're not great at, debating and being on the front lines. So they think, oh, a career in political science or international relations isn't really for me. And I think I've definitely felt that a lot. So I do model United Nations, and last week I had a conference, and I would say I'm not shy, but I'm introverted. So sometimes when I have to debate a lot or be like constantly talking to someone, I feel really worn out. And there's times when I go to a model UN conference and I'm having a lot of fun, I'm giving great speeches, and then there's other times like last weekend when I give like one speech and I feel completely drained out. And the next like 6 hours of the conference after I had given my one speech and I was completely done, I was thinking like, oh, maybe this isn't for me. I should just study something else. I shouldn't go into politics. Like, as much as I want to make a change in the world, I'm clearly not good at this. Like, those were kind of things that were going through my mind in the moment. So I think it's really interesting to hear that, like, even if you're someone who doesn't want to constantly be like on the front lines, you still have, a place for you within like activism and social change in politics.
I saw that question when you sent me the Google Sheet, and I'm so happy that you're asking that because it's such an important question. And I love that you have a good understanding of what it means to be an introvert, right? It doesn't mean that you're shy and you want to keep to yourself, but it's just where you get your energy. So extroverts can go into areas with a lot of people, and that actually pumps them up and gives them more energy, whereas introverts can be equally successful at that exchange, but exactly as you talk about it, find it draining and need to pull back. But it really dovetails well with my research project right now, where we're looking at the value of listening as a democratic skill. And so introverts may be more likely to be good listeners because they don't feel the need to engage and can actually pull back a little bit and observe and listen, and take in information and connect to others and hear others' stories. So I think desperately need both types of people in all political positions, to be there, to listen, to frame, to be more reflective, right? To drive the reflective exercises. So extroverts maybe can pull the introverts to engage more than they might naturally be inclined to, and introverts may pull extroverts to help them to kind of slow down and to reflect and to listen and do some of that important, thoughtful reflection that is as necessary for human connection and for problem solving and for addressing issues.
Hi, I'm so sorry, my internet cut out for a second.
Sorry, I'm not hearing you right now, but you were frozen for a bit and now let's try you again.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah. Sorry,
Yes.
I was saying my internet cut out for a second, but I'm back. Yes. And you said you looked at the Google Sheets I had kind of written out questions on. Did you by any chance see that I mentioned a TED Talk in it?
Yes.
Have you already seen that TED Talk, or is it one that you weren't?
No, tell me about it.
Well, I
No,
went
I'd be interested to hear about it.
I watched it a while ago, and then I kind of rewatched it last week. And in it, there's a lady who works like in political campaigns, and or better said, like social justice campaigns. Um, and she describes herself as an introvert, and she says that a lot of times she feels like within the field that she's in, as much as she's passionate about it, it does like drain her out. But over time, she's realized kind of what you said to me, that introverts are needed in politics, because you think that politicians are only these like super extroverted people. But in order to really make a meaningful change, we also have to be reflective, and we have to slow down and like think about the people who we're changing the world for.
Excellent. Yeah, I'll have to go listen to it. Maybe it would be something I can show my students.
It's really good. And it's not that long.
Great.
Well, no, I don't want to keep you for too long, so I just have one more question left. And it's,
Okay.
what advice do you have for anyone who might be watching this, young women, young adults who want to go into politics? Or not politics, but political science.
Mm-hmm. Or politics or anything. I mean, and actually I would say it doesn't even have to be about politics, although politics is, I think, a great field. If you want to make a difference in the world, if you care about making a difference, particularly structural differences, right? So we all make differences in our lives with the people around us in the jobs that we choose to do every day. But I think that if you really want to bring structural change, politics is a way to do that. It's a very frustrating way in the United States because it's slow, it's incremental. Our system is designed to discourage change, particularly big change, rather than to encourage it. But it is also an outlet for people who really want to leave an impact. And I would it sounds cheesy, but I would say just, believe in your voice, and use it. And really, it is the voice of young people that I think has already changed us positively as a nation, just within this last year. And if you look at some of the biggest voices on some of the most pressing issues, I mean, look at Greta Thunberg, right? Look at an impact that one young voice has had. It was the students at Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School here in the United States who finally pushed this country to start taking some steps in terms and be patient, because it's not going to be easy.
Yeah, I think that's great advice. I mean, everything you said has kind of put me at ease and made me realize that, like, yeah, this is really what I want to study and what I want to go into. So thank you so much, and for taking the time out of your day and everything.
Oh, it's been a pleasure, and I wish you best of luck in your future.
Thank you so
I'm
much.
sure it's going to be a bright one.
Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.